bead I know is upcycled,
Yeah.
is upcycled and reused and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, Bailey, how are you?
Doing good. How are you? Hi, Joseph. Good to see you.
Hey,
Joseph, thank you so much for joining us.
of course. Thanks for having me.
Super excited. We're just going to give a little bit of space and time for folks to roll in. And while they do, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, your name, where you're located, your organization, pronouns, if you'd like to share that, just take a moment to do that. Looks like we have a lot of folks rolling in, so I'm really excited.
And Joseph, do you have a presentation or more of a conversation?
I have a presentation.
Okay, excellent. We're going to make you a, actually, Bailey, you need to make Joseph a co-host so that he has presenting options.
Perfect. I will do that right now.
And we are recording this session, just so everybody knows. And if anybody, while we're waiting for more people to roll in, if you would like to introduce yourself in the chat, that'd be great. At the end, if we have time, we will hopefully have some time for some networking and discussion as well. So, yes.
Just something to throw out there, Maria. I realized I had my split screen and I'm recording, so I don't want to capture both of that. So if you don't mind, Maria, checking in on the chat just so I'm not having that disrupt the recording, and dropping in the agenda intermittently as well as we get more folks rolling in. That would be awesome.
Sure.
I can't help but open the chat. I want to know, even though I know everyone, I still want to see introductions, but I'll refrain.
Mark, excellent to have you on the call. How is your Hard to Recycle event planning going? It's coming up soon.
We're coming along. We're planning on taking televisions this Saturday, which it's going to be some back-breaking work.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We always get asked that, so we made a deal with the contractor, and we're going to accept. So I'm still waiting for my boxes to come over from this contractor from down in Tennessee. So we're going to. I'm hoping they get here before Friday. Otherwise, I'm going to be a nervous wreck.
Yeah. Well, yes, we tend to get a lot of TVs, especially the big, huge tube TVs and like the giant wooden sets that people are looking to get rid of. So I'd also say like to have a couple dollies. I've learned that the hard way. So.
And a couple of young, strong backs too.
Yes.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, maybe some of the back weight belts to help protect backs from lifting. Yeah,
no doubt. No doubt.
Well, I hope it's a great event. So maybe we'll have a chance to talk more about it after the presentation.
Sounds good.
Just going to give folks maybe 1 to 2 more minutes and we'll get started.
And I'm just muting people as they come in, if you aren't muted, so that you are aware. So if you need to unmute, then you can do so. Yeah, I can see Lewis is connecting to audio, and I think after that we can go ahead and get started.
Perfect.
I'm going to drop the agenda in one more time just for people who have joined.
Can you hear us, Lewis? Welcome in.
Looks like we have a couple, maybe some audio issues. Lewis, if you can hear us, but your microphone isn't working, if you can just put something in the chat to let us know, and we don't want you to not be able to hear us. Just while we're figuring that out as well, a quick review of the agenda. We were having people introduce themselves in the chat, so feel free to drop your name, pronouns, job title, and your location. We're very excited for our presenter, Joseph Klatt from Precious Plastics, who will get started in just a moment. And then there will be time for questions during or after the presentation. And then we should have some time for our standard networking that we like to have at the end of the meeting. So that is the agenda today. And Bailey, I think, are we ready to roll?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm super excited. I hope everyone else is as well to be joined today by Joseph Klatt. He is the managing director at Precious Plastic, which we're going to hear more about. They upcycle plastic and they have models that they share with folks all around the world, and they just do amazing work. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Joseph, rather than sort of mulling through your bio for you. But thank you so much for being here, and I'm super excited to learn from you.
Thank you so much, Bailey. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, I can give you a little bit about my background. So I'm from Columbus, Ohio, originally. It's where I am now. And I went to school at Indiana University in Bloomington. And during that time, I got really interested in sustainability. And as I was, in my studies and doing extracurricular activities around it, I really viewed waste as kind of really one of the missing pieces of sustainability, I felt, and something that I just felt, called to work on. And that's really what I've been doing since that time. So after graduate school, I went and worked at a waste company out in California called Recology. They manage all the waste for San Francisco, which has I believe, the highest diversion rate of any city, I think, in the world. And then I went to work at Ohio EPA in waste and recycling, where I helped set up a program called the Ohio Materials Marketplace, which is about trying to facilitate industrial reuse and recycling amongst industrial facilities, trying to create sort of an industrial symbiosis. So yeah, I worked at Ohio EPA for about 2.5 years, and great experience, but I wasn't quite cut out, I think, for that sort of environment. Felt a little bit more free-spirited. So I quit that job and I went traveling in Asia for 6 months, came back to the States and thought, I really want to work on something a little bit more hands-on, where I feel like I can make an impact right away. And during my time at Ohio EPA, I had found out about a project called Precious Plastic. And I found that project through YouTube. And it was like these crazy Europeans like melting plastic in their garage and building machines. And I just found it to be so interesting, so cool. So right when I got back from that trip, I saw a video on YouTube with a call to action, inviting people to come to the Netherlands and work on the next generation of these machines and products, machines to recycle plastic waste into new products. So I saw that video. I immediately reached out to them, to the founder, and said, I'd love to come. I have this experience. I think I can be a good use to the project. So I planned on actually volunteering for just 3 months. It was a whole volunteer project at that time. So I went for 3 months and decided to stay. And it's now 4.5 years later, and I'm still work on Precious Plastic. So it's been a long journey in many different ways. So yeah, and I am actually, so now I am like we call it our collaborations manager. I stepped down from our executive director position because actually I came back to the US just recently to start a local Precious Plastic project here in the US. So I stepped down for that position, but I'm still working with Precious Plastic. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So that's a long intro, but perhaps necessary. And I will now dive into my presentation. Okay. This. Okay. So for those of you who do not know, precious plastic is really a, oh, I don't know. Oh, maybe, sorry. I think I'm gonna have to click through this individually.
No worries, take your time.
So yeah, precious plastic is a small scale plastic recycling movement. It's almost hard to really define what precious plastic is. It's really started almost 10 years ago by a designer named Dave Hackens. He's a Dutch designer. And he started this as part of his graduation project for design school. And he started it because he saw scenes like this, and he realized the fact that plastic is just really everywhere, especially in the developing world. He had done some traveling around Southeast Asia in particular, and seen scenes just like you see here, where plastic is just everywhere. Especially on the beaches. I'm sure you might have been to different places around even the States where you see this on the beaches. And he wanted to do something about this and use design as a way to address a environmental problem like plastic waste. And just a little fact here that still in 2023, less than 9% of the plastic that's ever been produced has been recycled. That means that is still out there somewhere in the environment or buried in landfills, etc. So he started this movement to address this issue. And the mission of Precious Plastic is really about tackling the plastic waste problem. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's it's really about creating a community, creating a movement around a myriad of different solutions with some core key concepts and key strategies. And I would say, if you were to break down, why we believe that plastic waste has become such an issue, it comes down to these three things. Number one, recycling machinery often requires a huge capital investment that creates a really high barrier of entry for entrepreneurs. There was not a lot of small-scale recycling technology that's more accessible to an entrepreneur. Most of the recycling technology, looks like very high capital intensive, many conveyor belts going everywhere, huge machinery. Some people here have probably visited a recycling center and seen that. It's very expensive. Second, inaccessible knowledge about how to recycle plastic into new products. So when plastic was really invented as part of the mass production era, so it scaled from like a new thing into a mass production technique very quickly. It never had the time to develop small scale techniques around how to process that material, because it didn't have the time like wood and metal and other materials did, where you didn't have large scale technology. It was all done on a small local scale. Plastic never was not around at that time. It was already a mass production technique when it was invented. And then lastly, the problem comes down to the fact that we as a society view plastic as cheap, single use and disposable. And that's really fueling this problem. So it's this culture of consumption is really the societal problem that is really endemic, that we need to change. So you all are aware probably of this plastic waste problem. I'm not saying anything new, and many other people around the world are as well. Especially since, I'd say around 2016, 2017, people really started to become aware of this issue. It has certainly grown in awareness since that time. People understanding the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I think that was a huge moment in shifting consciousness around that. So there's lots of people who want to solve this problem, and precious plastic provides, some solutions for them to do that on a small scale. And that's really what differentiates precious plastic, I'd say, than traditional recycling. Really the small scale nature of it, DIY, really enabling entrepreneurs to get their hands dirty. So I would describe precious plastic as an open platform, which enables these people to start their own recycling projects. whether it's a small business where they're turning plastic waste into a new product that they're selling, or like an educational project where they are, educating their local community or at schools, doing workshops. People do with this platform many different things. Making a business is one portion, education, policy change. There's many people that do that as well. But our solutions come down to three main things. Number one is hardware. So Dave Hackens, the guy who made this project, he designed some small scale plastic recycling machines that enable people to take plastic waste, like a plastic bottle, shred it down into small granulates, and then input that into a small production machine, like an injection machine, extrusion machine, to actually turn that shredded material into a new product. And so now we have seven small scale, low cost and open source plastic recycling machines that people can either build themselves or buy from a independent machine builder that is taking our open source technology and just building and selling the machines as well. And this is one of the other really big defining features of our platform, is the open source part of it. So traditionally, a company will make a new machine and they're not going to share the diagrams about how to build that yourself. Precious Plastic always took the opposite approach, trying to enable the scalability of this as fast as possible. And that's why the designer chose to use open source as a way to do that, because the more people that can just understand the technology, build it themselves, the faster you can scale. You don't need to set up production facilities in every country to do that. So the hardware, very big component. The second is the knowledge. So the way this project has developed over time is in what we call versions. So there was Precious Plastic version 1, which is just Dave Hackens, the designer, releasing some machines and some information about how to recycle plastic. And then the subsequent versions have been where he got together a group of volunteers to just kind of understand this field of plastic recycling. What are the different plastic types? Like, how can we process each one of them? What are the differences between them? What sort of collection system can we imagine? Designing that and then releasing it. And each version has really built upon the core ideas with more machines, better machines, new information. And the form of that information has mostly come, I'd say, in the form of our academy, which is on our website, which is like it's like a repository basically of information. So how to build these machines, videos showing you exactly how to build them, talking about the different plastic types, collection methods, business, how to make a small business from plastic recycling. That's really the repo, I'd say, of our knowledge around plastic recycling, which really just didn't exist so much on the internet before that. It was mostly held within academic journals, textbooks, but as sort of like the citizen science level, it really wasn't ubiquitous. And then the last part of our strategy is really around platforms. So a digital ecosystem that connects our community, the people who want to start recycling plastic, connects them to enable the sharing of information. So what are you doing in your community that's really working? How can I implement that in mine? But also, like, from an economic standpoint, we have a marketplace where people can buy and sell these machines. They can design new molds and sell them to other people who have the machines, sell raw materials like shredded plastic if you don't have that access to that in your area. That's kind of the economic connector of our community as well. So diving in here to our hardware a little bit. So as I said before, this hardware is small scale. So normally you wouldn't see these types of machines on this level. You do a little bit in some areas, but certainly not as low cost as Precious Plastic kind of pioneered. So it's the machinery to shred the plastic waste. So that's a shredder or a granulator. Some people call it that. It's a little bit different, but same sort of idea. It's size reduction of plastic bottles, plastic containers, larger pieces of plastic. And then you take that shredded plastic and you put it in one of our production machines, which enable you to make a product. And the way that product looks and what you can really do in terms of how you can design that product depends on which production machine you're using. This is an extrusion machine where you input the shredded plastic into this barrel here. So here's the shredded plastic. You take that from the shredder, you put it into the hopper, and that goes into a barrel, which is heated with heating elements. And there's also an extrusion screw in there that then pushes the plastic through the barrel and through a nozzle, either into a mold, like here, this is a brick mold here. Can also be a beam mold to make like a longer beam. Or you can use it as like freehand to make like a sort of a filament. This is another one of the production machines. This is a sheet press machine, it's called, which makes large sheets of plastic, which you can cut up and make end products that you would, similar building product that you would like with wood. Here's some, actually, I have some next to me. This is some of that sheet product. Some other examples here. Yeah, so people, we put this into a download kit. So the actual designs for how to build these machines yourself, which have been downloaded many times, over 150,000 times. And tens of thousands of these machines are around the world. Basically in every country in the world, I would say. I'm shocked. I mean, I do a lot of traveling, and I'm just, sometimes I go to a place and I see some precious plastic machines there that, sometimes we just had no idea they were even there. Because it's open source, you don't actually know exactly where they end up. Here are some examples of the products, so the end products that you can make with these machines, which we, as the core precious plastic team, we design and release some of these products that product designs that people can use when they get started. But then, of course, people get our machines and design their own products as well. But one of the things that we have focused on in the last few years is furniture items. So larger, like human scaled objects. So chairs, stools, here's a bench that really enable people to interact with them on a human level. Some of the smaller machines make more like precise small objects, like something small like a carabiner like this, or like a wall socket. This is a light, this is a beam actually with then a strip of LED strip through it to make a light. This is a geodesic dome where the connector piece here is made with a precious plastic machine. And as you're looking at these products, you can probably tell, one of the main aspects here is the color. That's something that we've always pushed, is separating the material by color. So the plastic items that you're collecting. And the reason for that is it helps make these products look beautiful, because we want to push the idea that plastic is a material that is beautiful, is really useful, should not be wasted on single-use items. And playing with color is one way you can really do that. And also because our machines are small scale and sort of crafty maker type machines, you get some of these patterns that you would never get in an industrial machine, basically because the industrial machines are too good. They mix the material too well, so that you don't see the different color patterns that they could put into the machine. They get just mixed all together on an industrial scale. And the other bad side of that is that you mostly get gray and black recycled plastic products on an industrial scale, because it's not cost effective for them to separate by color and mostly by color as we can on a small scale. So they end up basically kind of downcycling the material. Here's some more like building material examples. There's like a building brick, kind of a big Lego. You can think about it like that. And these are beams as well. This is a table that we made for a guy out in California, and this was a kind of piece that's about, really communicating the fact that plastic is valuable, should not be wasted. It's a really, really high-end piece that again communicates the message that ultimately the whole project is about trying to change mindsets. So yes, there's like the physical component of like actually recycling the plastic waste into new products, but in a sense, everything is educational, pointed towards the fact that plastic is precious. That's why the name is what it is. Yes, there's the physical component, but it's really about the mindset change, because we don't want to be producing single-use plastic. That's ultimately the problem. I think will never be solved just by recycling. Recycling is part of the solution, but ultimately we have to stop producing in the first place. This just talks a little bit about our online academy. Tons of tutorial videos and information on that. You can find it at community.preciousplastic.com. Everything there is free and open source. All the pictures, all the videos you can use if you want to use it for your own project. Many people around the world have used that. And then our digital platforms, as I mentioned, it's kind of this ecosystem together. So we have our main website, we have our community platform, that's where our academy is hosted. We also have a map on there where you can drop a pin and see these different places around the world that are using precious plastic in their community. The Bazaar, which is that online marketplace where you can buy and sell machines, tools, raw materials. And then we have what's called a Discord channel or Discord server, which is kind of a chat between people so they can share information, get help from the community. And here is a screenshot of our map, but the map is actually interactive if you go on our website, which we have around 800, I think this is quite an old number now, over 1,000 organizations around the world are using this. 150 countries, over 30,000 people on here. And our real target, I'd say, are these, we really view this as a community of people. Of course, we're like sort of a platform, and most platforms would talk about like their users, but we put a big emphasis on the fact that we're just people. Nobody has like the ultimate answer. We're trying to solve this together. And we really try to empower these social entrepreneurs just to get started, to start recycling plastic waste into new products in a variety of different ways. And here you can see just some different people from around the world that have adopted our technology, started businesses, nonprofits, etc. So kind of the whole world of precious plastic, all the digital ecosystems, the knowledge, the hardware, we call the precious plastic universe. And it's through that universe that it's kind of once you get started, it's like there's many layers of it. I guess some people on the call, I think, have already dived into the universe to see that. But it's really, really beautiful, impactful community. It's been a great experience being part of that. Getting into our impact. So we did an impact survey actually recently. We just have some initial results from that, but you have the whole community making tens of millions of dollars from recycling plastic. Thousands of jobs have been created, and many tons of plastic has been recycled. This is actually 2023 numbers. We just did that about a month ago. But that has been one of the challenges for this project is, really trying to understand what is our impact. Because the fact that it's open source, many people just take the knowledge, take the machines, and they don't tell us, they don't put their pin on the map, they don't interact much with the community. So it's hard to get an accurate estimation of what really our impact is. But once you start keying into the aesthetics, the social media tags, you really start to see the impact, which is, I think, actually underestimated. In that open source nature of the project has been I think a lot of people would say, how can you just share this, and how do you get enough value back to be able to make it, viable? But I would say that the open source nature has been the key to our success. It's what has enabled this spread into every country in the world. It has made a huge social media following, a huge brand awareness around the project. So I'd say it's really been a key to our success. And here I just included a picture from, this is when I got involved. This was when I went to the Netherlands to design some of the new machines and products. And this is when 100 people from around the world came to design the machines and work on new products and work on business tools and all these different things. It was really, really probably the best experience of my life, I'd say. Just really interesting people who were willing to donate their time to just try to solve this problem in the best way that we know we can. So it's really been a project that's powered by people for people. Yeah, so I think I will end it here. I will probably stop for questions, and then I have two other main things I want to talk about, but I will stop now for questions before we talk about that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joseph. That was awesome. And we did have some questions rolling in while you're presenting. So the first question is, and if anybody wants to re-ask the question, feel free to unmute. But Neil was asking, like, what plastics can be used in the precious plastic system? And also, with the question, can plastic types be commingled in the processing?
Yeah, so the plastic types that work the best and that we sort of target the most are HDPE, number 2, plastic type number 2, polypropylene, plastic type number 5, and polystyrene, plastic type number 6. And the reason for that is, number one, those are very common consumer type plastic items. So, things that you might find in your fridge. And that's one of the major sources of the problem here is the consumer plastics, the single-use type stuff. And also just from a physical sense, those are the materials that work well in these machines. There's also there's thousands of types of plastics. This is one of the most difficult things about this material is that there's just so many types, and even just a type of plastic, it gets you like sort of in the category, but there's so many additives and so much chemical difference even amongst 2 different polypropylenes that like they're almost virtually different types of material. So the type only gets you so far. But yeah, the short answer is those 3 types are the targets. The one I should point out that does not work well in our machines is PET, which is plastic type number 1, which would be a water bottle when there's like a transparency to it. That is a material that does not work well. The main reason is the fact that the chemical composition requires a very specific melting temperature, and our machines cannot withstand within that short temperature range well enough to process that material. Yeah, but that's also a material that's the most recycled plastic type, so it actually works well in the sort of centralized system as opposed to some of these other plastic types, which will work better in more of a decentralized system because the centralized system is not taking care of those other types. Was there a second part of that question that I did not answer?
No, that was, the commingling, like can different types of plastic be commingled in a machine?
So typically we try to encourage people not to commingle. Reason being, it helps with recycling it again when you know what you're dealing with. And if you commingle the plastic, it's difficult to communicate to the next person who receives that item what it is exactly. In reality, can you commingle some of these materials for it to still make a good product? Yes, you can. But we encourage people not to for the recyclability reason.
And Neil just put in a question that kind of gets at a question that I had as well. He asked, does the presence of additives and chemicals in the end product make these products toxic? And I was also wanting to ask you about like the safety of doing this, like for the people that are melting plastics, like, the safety of it. So if you can talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's definitely a very hot topic, I'd say, within the community and people who are, aware of sustainability, aware of health around sustainability. So the reality is, yes, there are lots of chemicals in these plastics that are not good for humans. Some of which are, proven to not be good for humans. Other of which we have a good idea that they're probably not good for humans. Now, when a plastic item is, you have food in your plastic containers, that plastic has chemicals in there that, if melted or, if burned are toxic. However, when they're in that sort of inert state, I would say no, the impact on humans is not bad. I mean, there is debate about that, and depending on which plastic we're talking about, the debate changes. It does depend a lot on the chemical composition. Now, when you melt plastic, like in the precious plastic machines or in the industry, there's always fumes. Anytime you're melting plastic, there's always going to be some fumes, and there are volatile organic compounds in those fumes. The amount of VOCs depend on the type of plastic you're working with. And so yeah, some are more dangerous in that sense than others. Just like, some paint has VOC, high level of VOCs that you want to be a well ventilated environment, or a respirator, same sort of thing there. And I would make the comparison, to paint in terms of, you have to be able to handle that risk.
Thank you. And the last question that we had in the chat, at least for the moment, is you did touch on building material, and like with bricks and beams, are you finding, and so the question is anyone making building material at this scale, which I think you kind of answered then in the presentation. But so at what scale are people making bricks and beams and building material?
Yeah, certainly it varies in terms of, precious plastic. If you're using precious plastic machines, the scale is going to be relatively small scale compared to like an industrial capacity. But there's many, like in the US market, there's many recycled plastic building materials, like think of like an Adirondack chair, or like the benches you see in a park often use recycled materials. But yeah, I've seen many operations around the world that use precious plastic machines as well to make building materials. I'd say beams is the most widely used. They're pretty easy to make, and it can take it's a higher amount of contamination can go into the beams as well, so you don't have to clean the plastic as thoroughly. The bricks in general are just hard to make. The design is not super good, and it just takes a lot of time to make each brick. So I'd say the adoption of that particular product is not very high. But beams, yeah. And also sheets. Sheets is probably the most, in the developed world, global north, that's probably the highest adoption in terms of building materials, because of the aesthetic value. It looks recycled. That's a major thing, because people are willing to pay for that. People who care about sustainability want to talk about their sustainability journey, so they buy those products basically, and that creates a market for it.
Excellent, thank you. And another question came in from Ed. To your knowledge, does anyone use film plastic, and what type of quality control is required there when working with film plastic?
Yeah, so there are people that use film plastics in our machines. And I would say it's a difficult material because of its lightweight. Most of this plastic recycling technology, especially that we work with, it requires material to go through a hopper. And when you have that, it's difficult when you have a light material like film. Like technically it works, but it's hard just from like an engineering standpoint to get enough volume through to make it viable. But in the same sense, like it is a plastic material, like it melts, it works very similarly to the more rigid plastics. So it does work. I'd just say it's not as like viable from an engineering and from an economic standpoint.
Excellent, thank you. That's all the questions in the chat. Did anybody have, I know you said you had 2 more slides to share. Anybody else have any questions? You're free to come off of mute if you have any other questions at this time. Okay. All right. Well, if you want to keep going, then I think we'll probably have a few more questions and definitely more conversation after you finish up.
Sounds good. Yeah, so 2 points I wanted to cover. First one being adoption of precious plastic in the US. So it's kind of a interesting situation where we have a lot, probably half of our website traffic, half of like the sales on our online marketplace come from the US. There's a lot of interest from the US. But in terms of like successful like operations, whether nonprofit or small business, I would say like on a per capita basis is really a lot less than Europe. Our biggest markets in general for precious plastic, I'd say, is Europe, Australia, US, Chile, and then tons of examples as well in the global South. But of course, you're going to have, when you have a little bit more access to capital, even on a small scale, it helps in places like Europe, in the US. But when you compare Europe to the US, less functioning organizations in the US using precious plastic. And it's kind of been a curiosity of mine over time. Like, I don't fully understand that even, because again, you have all this traffic and interest from the US. You have an entrepreneurial culture, of course. You have access to capital, but yeah, for some reason not. The one of the things I know is sort of a barrier is all of our designs are in metric measurements, so that's somewhat of a barrier in terms of the conversion. But many people have converted it, and people make machines in the US as well. I think that's one barrier. But yeah, I'm totally not totally sure. But I think it's something that's always kind of interested me. And that's actually my second point was about, yeah, so I came back to the US recently to focus on a local project here in Ohio. Because, obviously the US in particular has a plastic problem in the amount of single-use plastic that we produce, and just general production. Obviously we do have we have recycling infrastructure here in the US. I was part of helping to try to develop that through the Ohio EPA, but I saw so many examples of really high value material that was not being recycled at all, like on the commercial level. And so anyway, I came back to try to target that material that a lot of which I knew about. In the product that I'm working on here is the sheet product to make a building material from recycled plastic. And so I'm setting up a facility here in Columbus, which should be live here in June. Targeting on the waste stream side, material that is not getting recycled currently. And then on the end product side, selling these sheets of material, which is like a 8-foot by 4-foot sheet of plastic. So it's same size as plywood, selling that to green builders, architects, and designers who want to use more sustainable materials in their buildings or products. So that's been a fun journey as well. And I set up many projects, precious plastic projects around the world as part of my my role at Precious Plastic. I went to Africa a couple times, and Hawaii, and Bangladesh, and then we did other projects around the world as well.
Thank you so much, Joseph. And I do want to give Tyler Bonner, and he has some of his team here, a chance to introduce their project, also to introduce it to you, Joseph, because we do actually have in Athens, Ohio, a local-based plastic shop that's part of the community maker space through Rural Action. And I know that they have done a lot of the open source learning from precious plastics and things like that. And so I wanted to give them an opportunity to introduce their projects to the group in that capacity.
Hey, hey Joseph, it's great to virtually meet you, and I would totally encourage everybody on this meeting to like get on the Precious Plastics websites and the bazaar and just like kind of explore some of the awesome stuff that people are doing around the world, which is super inspiring. Yeah, we mostly work with events, as we did a presentation a couple months ago. But during 2020, when COVID was, pretty much full swing and all the events were canceled, we kind of used the Precious Plastics design machines as like a bit of a pivot project to try to continue diverting waste from the landfill and kind of working toward hopefully establishing some products that we could sell to raise some money during that time. But really, it was sort of the trial run. There really is a bit of a learning curve with all of these machines. But yeah, so we started out with a small shredder and an injection molder. We were making some coasters and little plant pots, and we did the face shield molds. But Maria and I actually, and the Zero Waste Program tag teamed a grant through the EPA more recently. So we got our bigger shredder in, and we're going to be getting some of the version 4 extruder and sheet press and some other stuff too. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's just a quick run through, but Joseph, it would be awesome to have you down at some point, maybe in the fall when our event season slows down a little bit, just to show you what we're doing. And I'm sure we could learn a lot from you too. Like I said, there's a big learning curve, and especially with these new machines, I think it'd be helpful to try to connect the dots a bit from an expert who obviously knows what he's doing. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tyler. I've known about you guys for a few years now, and it's been on my list to get in touch with you and stop by the shop. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Excellent. Does anybody have other questions, comments? Feel free to unmute. All right. Well, thank you so much, Joseph. That was fantastic and such a cool learning opportunity, both internationally, but also like to hear like that you're in Columbus, which is so cool because this is a reuse corridor meeting, and it's about Central Appalachian networks connecting and reusing materials, and really focusing on the goal of one person's trash is another's treasure. So so thank you so much for joining and really even bringing it home to the reuse corridor into our area as well. So hopefully we can keep those conversations going. So if you would, if you want to stop screen sharing, that'd be great. You're welcome to stay for the last 10 minutes of our meeting. We usually wrap up with everybody to be able to do a little bit of networking. So kind of updates, what's going on with people's programs, what events you have coming up, that type of thing. And while I am still unmuted, I will continue to talk. And I wanted to share, because I saw that Jane Forrest Redfern from Athens Hocking Solid Waste District wasn't on today. And I just wanted to congratulate Jane on two things. The first is officially opened the hard to recycle collection facility in Logan, Ohio. So that was awesome. And so that location is going to be able to take TVs, e-waste, scrap metal, textiles, books. I'm missing quite a few things, but pretty much any hard to recycle items, even tires, she's going to be taking there. It's by appointment only. And it's a great model of what we're also trying to build in Athens and in a lot of other communities too. So there was also a very, very successful hard to recycle collection event on Saturday and Earth Day in Athens that was run through the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District. We saw over 1,000 cars, recycled 2 semi trucks and 3 roll-offs of tires. a roll-off of e-waste, 3 roll-offs of scrap metal, and about 5 box trucks of reusable items. So it was a very intense event. I know a lot of us on this call were working it, but it was very successful. So I wanted to do 2 shout outs for those successful events. And I also wanted to give, I know Rick has a couple events coming up. So Rick, if you would like to unmute and plug some of your events too.
Yeah, this Saturday at the Proctorville, Ohio, so Lawrence County Fairgrounds from 9 until 1. We'll be doing our Recycle Fest. The following Saturday in Portsmouth at the police department from 9 until 1 as well. We just completed a downtown Ironton cleanup last Saturday with about 150 volunteers. Got a lot of great stuff done. The previous week in Portsmouth, we went into some really rough neighborhoods, and between tires and scrap and everything else, we picked up nearly 26,000 pounds of trash. So it's been busy.
Wow, that's awesome, Rick. I just want to shout something out. I think it kind of, this presentation was very impactful for me. It kind of came full circle. I know this is something that was brought up in the last meeting, and I'm still working on getting a deliverable to everyone so that I can share what I learned. But Joseph, I actually visited the Netherlands 2 weeks ago. So I was meeting with ReUse, Jean, if you're maybe familiar with him. He even mentioned Dave and how he knew him. Jean is an architect as well. And I'm really excited to share what I learned there. I saw all kinds of really cool examples of circular economy, upcycling, reuse. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And also just for some context, Joseph, this was to inform our community makerspace and reuse corridor hub that we will have in Huntington, West Virginia. So I'm with Coalfield Development. We're a nonprofit that focuses a lot on workforce development and sustainability. And we're going to have a hub that we're revitalizing. It's a brownfield site, huge factory. We're revitalizing it for solar hauler, largest installer of solar in West Virginia and in our region throughout Appalachia as well. But it'll be a meeting point for a lot of folks here. So it'll be like an aggregation hub, processing, inventory, and I want to dive full into precious plastic stuff as well. I would love to really market this, and I'm curious to see how maybe we can work together with what you're trying to implement there in Columbus as well. So I think this was just super exciting and impactful, and I don't want to take up too much of the network time here, but maybe we can connect sometime after this.
Super cool. That's great.
I was also going to make a plug that, Joseph, when you said that you helped design the Ohio Materials Marketplace, that there's quite a few of us, I think, in Ohio that are on that, and it's a really cool marketplace. And I know Coalfield Development in West Virginia are pretty jealous of it and have actually met with OEPA about how to get that started in West Virginia and Kentucky and some other places too. So the reuse corridor, when we learned about the marketplace, was so that's also a really neat that you helped design that and implement that.
Super cool.
Joseph, have you had any interaction with the folks at PureCycle yet?
I haven't recently. I remember when they were just getting started, 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. But I have not checked in with them recently. Are they up and running now? They're over by Cincinnati, right?
They're just by Ironton. They're 15 minutes from us. They announced yesterday that all the mechanical is done and they're ready to start moving a bunch of product now. Their biggest issue is going to be sourcing all these number 5s. So I was just hoping that maybe between your contacts and them, it's important that they become successful quickly. So
yeah.
Rick, so they're sourcing number 5s. Can you share a little bit more about them? Like, what is their product line going to be?
I'm not sure of what it all is yet.
That's fair.
I just know that they plan on taking polypropylene and making it as pure, if not purer than virgin. So,
okay, thank you.
I have a question about that hub in Huntington. Is there a opening plan in terms of like timeline?
Yeah, so we're supposed to be open to the public 2025. So we just finished up soil remediation. That was probably honestly 5 to 6 months ago now. So we're in the process of finalizing designing. That's a big reason why I met with ReUse to inform some of the architecture aspect to include as much reuse as we can. So I'm still learning a lot around that. It might be more on the aesthetics end because I know there's all kinds of like rules and regulations about, using reuse in structural situations, but most of the structure is staying anyhow. But that is supposed to be finalized in the next 6 months, the design for it, and then we'll start construction. But the structure there it's pretty sound, so there won't be too much change in that aspect. It'll just be a lot of additions. But we're getting a shredder here soon through Lorianne. She's the US representative, if that's the correct terminology, for ReUse. She's helping us get it secondhand from someone in Atlanta, so I think we will be able to start processing some of this stuff soon, hopefully.
Cool. That's really cool.
But I'm happy to share more. I have a bunch of flyers and stuff that I can send you, PDFs on the design and stuff like that, if you're interested in seeing that.
Yeah, very much so.
All right, excellent. Well, we've got about 4 minutes left. Yeah, I know. An excellent point. Ed just messaged me our bail. For those of you who have been with us for the long haul and the OEPA grant that Rural Action has, our baler was finally installed last week. Yay. And so that is to collect film plastic, because that is one of the big barriers that our local recycling center won't collect. So the idea with the film plastic, we'll be collecting film plastic. We will be able to bail it and get it to Mundo and Marietta, Mundo Recycling in Marietta. There's also a place in Columbus that will take it as well. But part of that OEPA grant that Tyler mentioned is an upgrade to the plastic shop and their machinery, with the idea that about 10% of the film plastic that we'll be collecting will be going into the plastic shop and being upcycled into product lines. So I'm sure that with Joseph, with some of the things that you said about that it's possible, but that it just can be a little harder, that we'll be experimenting with that in the plastic shop. So, so maybe in a few months, we'll have some more feedback on that and utilizing film plastic in that line, in the product line. So, but we're very excited about the baler finally being installed.
Maria, will you be able to do shrink wrap from boats and plastic pallets and all that stuff? Will you be able to handle that?
Yeah, and that kind of film plastic is actually a much higher value than like grocery bag. So, I mean, if we found enough of that to create just a bale of that, it's a much higher value of film plastic. So we'd actually be able to make a little bit of money off of it. To start, we're not expecting to be able to make 1,000-pound bale off of the shrink wrap plastic. Like, to be able to get enough and aggregate enough of it on its own, without it being baled, that's part of the issue. Is like 1,000 pounds of film plastic is a lot to collect loose. So so we're going to be piloting it and trying out. But I think for our first few bales, probably we'll be doing mixed. But the shrink wrap plastic is the high quality film plastic that recyclers want. So yeah, and we'll be working with Ohio University and their surplus to collect their shrink wrap plastic when things are coming in. But the boats, that's a great suggestion, Rick, of talking to lakes and things, that when they're de-winterizing their boats, I know they just get them all wrapped up in plastic. So that's a really great idea. I know that the key